Chris, thank you so much for joining us on our PR masterclass. So far, we've been showing our businesses how to write a press release and why it's important and giving them tips and tricks. We now want to talk about social media. And I think we all agree that social media and PR is really important in digital marketing. But how can the two support each other, in your opinion?
Well, since the turn of the century and definitely since the turn of the decade, social media has just become bigger and bigger and bigger, and businesses really need to be all over that. And when it comes to your PR, there's so many ways that you can start to move that and mold that into your business plan. So you can interact with journalists, see media friendlies, and kind of communicate with bloggers in a whole way that you could never do before. You have a bit more of a personal interaction and knowledge of them. You have the capability to promote content very, very quickly and easily and get it in front of millions of viewers. There's the scope for that, and it's it doesn't take as long to do that.
As you said, social media is massive in terms of its scale, but also how many platforms there are. It can be quite a minefield.
Yeah.
If we start with Twitter first, what would be your kind of Twitter PR tips, and how would you utilize Twitter to help boost your PR?
So, hashtags are always a great place to start in terms of looking for what kind of content people are wanting to hear about, or in terms of what journalists are looking for. So, hashtag journo requests or hashtag PR requests, perhaps a good start, but it's very, very broad. So there's a next level. I think my top tip was utilizing Twitter lists in a different way. And there's kind of 3 different sections you can go with Twitter lists.
Okay.
So I would start by kind of taking a bit of a step back. So look at who has covered your brand previously, who has talked about your business, your products, perhaps in a magazine or an online blog, and see who those are. So check your backlink profile. Really great way to do that. Using Moz's Open Site Explorer, you can see every single link that comes to your website and have a look at every single magazine or blog that's talked about you.
Okay.
And I guarantee you when you're on there, you'll be able to find a link to their Twitter. So add those onto your Twitter list. So that straight away, you've got people who have already covered you.
So that's like your list of champions.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Absolutely. Because, let's just assume that they're still talking around about the same kind of content. You can really start to build from that point. So you've taken that step back, what's happened previously, and then you build that to go forward. Now, just because you're doing that for your brand doesn't mean you can't do it for your competitors. You can absolutely do that. So see who's covered your competitors. Just because they may have talked about something in the past, you may not have been a business at that point 2 years ago or something. So look what they've done as well. Do
you think there's a place for Facebook in a PR and marketing strategy for a business?
I definitely think so. When it comes to kind of old school PR, interacting with editors and from newspapers and the likes of magazines, you have a very kind of cold interaction. It's an email, or it's a very quick interaction or exchange of conversation. And the founder of Victory PR, which is a PR firm in New York, she put it very, very well. What she said was, we had these cold interactions previously, but with Facebook, I started to become almost friends with journalists that I knew, other bloggers that I knew, and I began to kind of get an insight into what they like, or what they necessarily like to write about, or what they're interested in. So at that stage, if you're starting to connect with journalists and media influencers on Facebook, you get an interest of what they like to write about.
So we both agree that Facebook, you can build that network, and we've covered those 2 big ones, Facebook and Twitter, but what about other platforms? I mean, LinkedIn is the business social network. Definitely. And are there any others that you think businesses should be looking at?
I guess, starting with LinkedIn, it is that kind of next level engagement with journalists. Once you've kind of reached that talking point on Facebook and Twitter, you kind of know who they are. Connecting with someone on LinkedIn is quite a professional way. You can't just barge in there and walk into someone's office and ask to connect. You've got to kind of know them already. There's definitely one way you can do that. Say, for example, between me and you may, for example, have a connection that I might want to know, so I can go through you to introduce me into that way. So there's always that way to kind of connect with people there.
We always find that the question we're asked the most is about inspiration for content and knowing what to write. We've already discussed in this series and in our conversation that you need to separate yourself from your competitors. So do you have any top tips of where businesses could look for inspiration, or platforms on how to help drive their content?
Absolutely. I mean, so to start with, your customers. So if you're engaging with certain hashtags on Twitter, you can start to see what kind of questions are being asked around. It could be around particular products for what you actually have, or it could actually be around an industry news specific topic that they're asking questions around. So using social media, Twitter there. But you've also got tools such as Answer the Public and Quora. Again, going onto these sites, you can ask pretty much anything or see what kind of questions are being asked on Quora. Answer the Public, for example, you could type in Windows. You know, and we can see if there's some kind of question that people need to know about Windows that hasn't been answered recently, or there's a different angle that you can bring on there. So it kind of gives you that inspiration. And you've got to be careful with content though. It has to serve a purpose. And when you're thinking of content, that is your starting point. Don't try and get around what it's going to be, but like, what do we want to do with this content? Okay, is it going to entertain somebody? Is it going to educate somebody? You know, are we looking to drive sales from this? Or are we looking to try and get leads from this? What is its purpose is your starting point. And then you kind of form your content around there. Top tip in terms of the best kind of content that gets the highest click-through rate, striking an emotion with a reader is definitely a big touching point. You know, if you say you should be doing this instead of this, or you know, do you fall in the category of doing this? It definitely strikes an emotion with someone to click on that, because users are only going to tolerate about 20% of the time that kind of promotional content that's kind of salesy. So you know, that's a good balance. Be disciplined. Be disciplined with it.
Yeah. Speaking of discipline, that leads us on very smoothly to our next question, is about time. For any small business owner, time is one of the biggest challenges. You know, their to-do lists are massive, and PR and marketing sometimes can fall down that list slightly. Do you have any top tips or tools that you use to help manage your time and build social media into your daily routine?
So there's tools like Hootsuite, which essentially you can upload all of your social channels onto there, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whichever one suit you, and you can actually post across all channels from one central place. And if you wanted to schedule a week's worth of content, you can. If you wanted to schedule a month's worth of content, you can.
Great. And finally, you know, you're the expert. I have to ask your top tips and tools that you would recommend to any business to either sign up for or start implementing in their business now.
You can spend all the time in the world trying to find a question. You've got to research around, like the tools I used before, you know, mentioning Answer the Public and Quora. Definitely great places to find those questions that are already been asked. But you can, you know, get those sent right to you. You can look at Harrow, you can look at SourceBottle, and of course JournoLink. You can answer the questions that are already being asked rather than coming up with the questions yourself. So they're definitely some of my top tools to use.
And then finally, top tips. What are your top tips that a business can take away from this interview and start thinking about in their business today?
Okay, so number one, don't focus on one platform. Instead of finding out this doesn't work, how about find out the one that does work? Try out different ones at the same time to kind of pick out, saying, perhaps our business is really better focused on LinkedIn. You know, B2B companies tend to be like that. But if you've got an e-commerce that's got a real big set, you know, product that's highly desirable, you know, putting it in front of people on Facebook and Twitter might be a better force there. But it really depends on your business. So don't focus on one of those. Diversify your social media platforms. Number two, take a step back before you go forward. You know, look at those journalists that have covered you before, because the chances are they're going to perhaps cover you again going forward as well. Number three, research the content. You know, research what are people talking about, where are the content gaps that relate to your industry specific news. You know, understand your audience as well. You know, there's not much point creating content that's not going to relate with your audience as well, particularly if you're looking to target on a specific sector in Facebook or something like that. Number four, definitely form a routine. Build social media practices into your everyday. You know, check it out. Use 10 minutes before work if you can, just to kind of get those insights that you want to get, but also start to look around, you know, automation tools like Hootsuite. Really start to, you know, make that process a lot easier for yourself. So don't waste time. Okay. I guess finally, just don't waste time on trying to get yourself mentioned in perhaps a big tabloid or something that's going to take a lot of effort for you to get there. Because ultimately it might get put in front of the audience that isn't perhaps suited for your business.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's far better to get a post put on a Facebook page specific to your brand around your industry news, because it's going to get in front of the right audience.
Yeah, or a blog.
Absolutely. So there's, you know, don't waste time on going sometimes big. Just go for perhaps a few small to medium-sized ones, and you're going to get the traffic, because social media just has millions and millions of viewers.
Great. That's been really helpful, Chris, and I think there's some really good and practical tips that our businesses can take away. So they've got no excuse now not to be integrating PR in their social media.
Glad to help. Thank you.
Thank you.